A Girl Called Harris. Chapter 1. Glasgow Central Station, February the 23rd, 1941. Charlie McGinn ignored his mother. He dug his hands deep into his coat pocket, lowered his chin into his woolen scarf, and pretended she wasn't there. If she was going to send him away, he was going to ignore her. He stretched out his legs and lifted his feet onto the opposite seat. The door to the compartment slid open, and 7 children, 4 boys, 3 girls, all with gas mask cases hung correctly in place, were ushered in by uniformed women. Charlie had no idea what the uniform stood for. Everyone had a uniform these days. He kept his boots firmly on the seat. It meant one boy had nowhere to sit. Charlie ignored him too. "Young man," said the woman. Her voice was prim, bossy. Someone used to telling children what to do, and used to having children do what she told them. But Charlie was no child, not in his own eyes at any rate, even if he was dressed in shorts. A couple of the boys recognised him and nudged each other. Charlie decided he might as well ignore the woman as well, which meant he had to decide where best to direct the moodiest stare he could muster, and that presented a problem. He couldn't look out the window because he'd see his mother, and he didn't want to see his mother. Look the other way, and there was no avoiding this bossy woman. He had just settled on staring at his boots, scuffed, black, and just like his father's, when they weren't there anymore. It took his mind a moment to realise what had happened. With one grand sweep, delivered in a movement so swift it blurred, the woman knocked his boots from the seat and sent them crashing to the wooden floor of the compartment. "Oof!" said Charlie, as the motion of his falling feet jerked him upright. One of the boys sniggered. "Thank you, young man," said the woman. "There, Albert, you sit opposite the young man." Charlie looked out the window, and his mother smiled at him. She raised a hand in farewell. She looked sad. Charlie felt sad, but he wouldn't want his mother to know that. The bossy woman shut the compartment door behind her. Charlie glared at the boy who'd taken his feet seat. "You Charlie McGinn," said one of the boys. Charlie thought he recognised him from Scotland Street, his home, his street, the street where he'd lived all his life. He wasn't sure when he'd see it again. Maybe never. "Aye," said Charlie, and leant his head back against the seat. He stared at the compartment ceiling. Once upon a time it had been white. Now it was dirty grey. A loud whistle from the train's engine put a stop to any more questions. The carriage lurched forward. "We're moving!" yelled one of the boys, excitement filling his voice. "So you say," muttered Charlie, and glanced out the window. His mother was still there. She raised a hand once more. He looked away and didn't look back. The train heaved itself out of the station in a cloud of smoke. Inside the compartment the children started to talk at once. All heads turned to the window, as if it might already reveal where they were headed. Charlie McGinn did not share their excitement. He didn't want to be an evacuee. He was old enough to stay home in Glasgow. He was much older than these children. 13 at his last birthday, and not far off 14. The rest of them, the wee ones who'd been herded onto the train, were 2, 3, 4, even 5 years younger. He was bigger than them all. He felt stupid standing on the platform, his head and shoulders sticking up above them. One of the kids in his compartment, with a drip hanging from his nose, looked no older than 7, maybe even 6, pretty much still a bairn. He told his mother if she didn't want to look after him, he could look after himself. Him and his gang, the Scotland Street Strollers, because they never ran, could look after themselves. The Strollers weren't scared of anything or anyone. Not even Mr. Murdo and his belt at school. Murdo beat them and called them ten-a-penny nobodies. But that didn't scare them. It hurt them right enough, but didn't scare them. Nor did Weasel the caretaker, who was always giving them a slap because he could. The Strollers definitely weren't scared of the Germans. But his mother must be, because she was sending him away. She was an air raid warden, the only woman air raid warden in Kinning Park, they said. That made Charlie secretly proud, although not as proud as he was of his father. Charlie's dad was away at sea, on the convoy sailing across the Atlantic to collect food from the Americans to feed the people of Glasgow, Scotland, and the whole of Britain. The Americans were a grand people, said Charlie's dad. From what he'd seen in the movies, Charlie liked Americans as well. Once, just after the war began, he and Robbie Patterson had snuck into the Gaumont Picture House to see a grown-up picture about gangsters in America in a city called Chicago. It looked a bit like Glasgow. The strollers tried to copy the American gangsters, but when they tried to smoke cigarettes, it made Robbie cough. And when Charlie tried to talk like a gangster with a cigarette hanging out the corner of his mouth, it made his eyes water. Frankie Strachan said he was crying, so Charlie had to fight him. In Charlie's world, only lassies greeted. None of the strollers had touched cigarettes since. Instead, they wore their bonnets pulled low, right down to their eyes, even if it did mean they occasionally tripped over things. Charlie hadn't a chance to tell the strollers he was being sent away. His mother surprised him that morning with his bag already packed. She made him a spam sandwich to keep him going in the journey up to Oban. He hated spam, and had no idea what Oban was. She told him there was a special letter inside the bag. His father wrote letters to Charlie. His dad was better at drawing pictures than writing words, so he always included a picture of something he'd seen at sea. The last letter included a drawing of a German U-boat after one of the battleships guarding the convoy forced it to the surface. Charlie showed it to all his friends. He told them the battleship blew the submarine clean out of the water, and the strollers cheered.